We're going to get started pretty soon here, guys. Thanks so much for being with us today. Cool. So we're going to go ahead and get started now. Before we kick things off, we just have a couple of housekeeping items that we want to chat through. The first of which is that this webinar is being live streamed. So if you had anyone else who wanted to join live, they can find the live stream link over at Eventbrite's YouTube channel. That's at youtube.com/EventbriteTV. The second housekeeping item is that this webinar is being recorded. So if you registered for the event, you will receive a copy of the recording after everything has concluded. And if not, you can always find this content on demand on Eventbrite's YouTube channel at the aforementioned address. Last call before we begin is we just want all of our listeners to understand that this webinar contains individual opinions of our panelists, and those individual opinions should not be considered medical, legal, or professional advice. As business owners and event creators, you are ultimately responsible for the safety and security measures that are put in place at your own events. And today is really just more of an opportunity to connect with the creator community and hear more about how others are thinking about and also approaching bringing events back online in person. Awesome. So given the ongoing changes of local and state regulations regarding COVID-19, it's really important to stay informed about how COVID-19 is affecting your area, and just tune into local authorities to understand what updates and changes they have for you as your source of truth. So housekeeping done. Throughout the past few weeks, we've been collecting hundreds of fantastic questions from event creators to make sure that today's content is really centered around the topics that you guys are interested in hearing about. And to that end, we're really excited to hear from our panelists on how they're going to bring their events back safely. A resource that you guys should all definitely check out after this webinar is over is Eventbrite's new safety playbook. So we partnered with the risk management and health experts over at the Chertoff Group to put together a comprehensive guide so that you can navigate how you'll bring your own businesses back to in-person events. So the Eventbrite safety playbook will help you understand a couple of items, some of which are the risk of transmission of COVID-19 at events, your role in managing that risk, a pre-event safety checklist, and also great ways to communicate your protocols, procedures, and processes, both to staff and to attendees. So you can find the Eventbrite safety playbook on Eventbrite's blog at www.eventbrite.com/blog. So without further ado, I want to thank everyone again for joining us today. We're looking forward to the conversation. I'm one of your hosts, Shirene, and joining me today is my wonderful co-host, Mel. Mel and I are both on the customer success team at Eventbrite, and we have the absolute privilege of working very closely with the event creators that we'll be speaking with today. So without further ado, Mel, I'll kick it over to you to introduce our panelists.
Thanks, Shirene. Hi, everyone. Welcome. So excited to be hosting this webinar today. I know it's a very big topic of communication right now, how we kind of move into this world of going back into in-person events. So today we're excited to be chatting with two event experts who are both venturing back into the world of in-person events and here to share their experiences. So today we have Freddie Kole, who I personally have had the pleasure of working with for over 5 years actually now. And Freddie's been throwing events in Chicago for over 15 years, including bar crawls, booze cruises, festivals, and especially some really amazing holiday style events. And we also have Kate Levenstien here, who started Cannonball Productions when she was just 26 years old. And over the past 7 years has conceptualized and promoted over 100 festivals across the country. So some amazing event experts that can span the event world here. So again, thank you both for joining today and just opening up to share some of your experiences and your knowledge around really what it's taking for you and your business to jump back into the in-person events space again. So a quick kind of introduction, I'd like to kind of start off just by having you both tell us a little bit about your company, your events, and just as maybe a fun fact, what are some quarantine pastimes you've been doing so far? So Freddie, if you want to get started and kind of share with us a little bit about your business.
Sure, absolutely. So I started Chicago 20-something in 2005. I've been doing it since then. We throw roughly 300 events each year, mostly in Chicago. We sold over 250,000 tickets last year. We do bar crawls, booze cruises, festivals, holiday parties, etc. We are basically, we sell in bulk. We sell lots of tickets to our events. We do lots of events, 5 or 6 every weekend. During the quarantine right now, I guess my favorite hobby is hang out with my kids. Normally I'm working a lot of weekends, but this is giving me time to hang out with my 3.5-year-old son and my 1.5-year-old daughter. So it's been quite a different time the past couple of months, but really fun.
Good. Awesome. And Kate, let us know a little bit about your business.
Yeah, I'm Kate Levenstien. I'm really excited to be here with you all. I started Cannonball 7 years ago, and we produce food and beverage festivals around the country, mostly inside of stadiums or iconic venues. We worked with large-scale zoos for our Lions, Tigers, and Brews event, but our best-known event is the Bacon and Beer Classic that we've held inside of NFL and MLB stadiums for the last 7 years. And earlier this year, we actually launched our newest festival called Seltzerland, which is a hard seltzer festival that was scheduled to go to about 10 markets. More on that coming soon. And my favorite pastime during quarantine has probably been attempting to garden. It's been a challenge. I have 1 zucchini, but
Hey, that's great.
4 green beans and 1 zucchini, but it's been a fun challenge to attempt.
We've all been able to kind of find some more Zen activities during this time, which has been nice. It's a good break from the event world, as we're all so used to. So I want to also, everybody listening here has been impacted by COVID, and I want to just take a quick second to ask you, Kate, if you want to share, you mentioned that you were already kind of planning to expand your event across multiple different markets, and that has changed. So can you share with us a little bit about how your company and your events have been impacted by COVID so far?
Yeah, sure. So when we launched, we usually launch our tickets around Black Friday or earlier in the year. And then our events usually range from April through October or so. So we had 9 festivals on sale when this all happened, with thousands of tickets sold for each one. Most of our events are all inclusive food and beverage. So our tickets range from $50 to $125. So we had collected a lot of the ticket revenue from our community, and then we had to decide to postpone. Initially we postponed to dates that we thought were safe at that point. That we were, our first markets were in San Jose and Seattle, which were the 2 counties that first shut down large scale gatherings. And then, San Francisco and others followed, New York, et cetera. So we had to jump in right away to communicate and postpone, and then process refunds and handle communication around that, which honestly, Eventbrite held our hand the whole way through. I don't know what we would have done. Shirene daily, was having conversations with me about how to handle refunds. So that was the initial hurdle. And then we kind of got back to the drawing board and started thinking about what the future looks like for our company and for this year especially.
Great, thank you for sharing. Freddie, I know that you've kind of talked to me a little bit about how you've had to be pretty nimble during this time as well. Can you share what has impacted, how COVID has impacted your company and your events?
Sure. COVID obviously has been pretty brutal to our company, as I'm assuming all event companies. We had events lined up all throughout March, April, May, June. We basically were canceling, 1 month at a time, 1 week at a time. And it was rough. It was tough to have our team plan for events and knowing they might be canceled. So morale was down, definitely hurt. One thing that we've really focused on now is being more nimble, and we're used to plan events 3-4 months in advance and start selling tickets 3-4 months in advance. We're now doing shorter, quicker events as our turnaround goes. So we're putting tickets on sales 2-3 weeks before events, just so customers kind of feel confident when they're buying their tickets, they're going to come. So it's been, there's changes nonstop in Chicago right now. We rolled back this past week. They're rolling back our restrictions. So we just have to make sure that we're constantly adapting and changing things to stay in line with the current protocols.
Awesome. It's great. It's great to hear it, because I know everybody who's listening is feeling that. And it's a tough thing to talk about, but what we're here really to talk about is how you guys have moved forward and what it's like planning actual in-person events again. So just to kind of kick off where the rest of this conversation will go, or we'll dive deeper into the details of what that looks like. Can you, Freddie, if you want to tell us a little bit about what events you are currently hosting that are happening now in person and live events?
Sure, absolutely. We started doing live events in the middle of June. We started doing our Skyline cruises. We used to do a lot of booze cruises. We've had to kind of taper them back a bit. We're doing reduced capacity events. So we're operating at 25% capacity right now. So we're basically we're doing that right now, and we just launched a series of Cubs game watch parties at a venue across the street from Wrigley Field, and those will start this weekend.
Awesome. And Kate, I know you just launched an event or getting it going. Can you share with us what's in the works for you as well that's going to be live and in person?
Yeah, so we during quarantine, and I guess another pastime was attempting another hobby, which was playing golf. And so my husband and I were out walking our local community course. And we're based in New York, but we came upstate. And so there's a lot of space up here, but we weren't really allowed to leave our home. So we went and walked a course that was not quite open yet. And we had this aha moment on the course. We looked around and we were like, wait a second, this provides so much space. There's tee times that people can sign up for, which distance, one another in groups along the course. And it's beautiful space to utilize, and kind of falls in line with our mantra of using iconic venues that aren't typically used for festivals or for events for that reason. So we started calling up golf courses and calling our partners that we had on board from Seltzerland, and we just launched on Thursday last week with Seltzerland 2.0 at golf courses. So this timing could be better. We're really excited about it, and we're hoping to take it to about 5 or 6 markets this year.
That's great.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's great to hear about the types of events you guys are bringing back online. I think the question on everyone's mind is how. We've had a lot of questions that have come in around how you guys are thinking about attendee safety and on-site safety, attendee protocols, and I can imagine with all of the ongoing changes, those are difficult topics to navigate and think through. So to that end, and I'll start with you, Kate, who and what resources are you consulting when making decisions about your events? And as a result, what new safety measures and procedures are you considering, both pre-event and also on-site at your events?
Okay. So that's a thorough question, because we have a lot to consider when we're hosting festivals of this nature. Like, I just had a call this morning with the Deputy General Counsel of the state of Illinois. So we are, it is an ongoing process of talking to local, state, city health departments and legal teams of these states to make sure that we are following all protocols and guidelines that they are putting in place. So I would say, honestly, check out your local city and state guidelines. It's never, it's not always straightforward, because things are changing and we have to be able to adapt and be flexible. So, that's one thing. It's not an easy process all the time. Secondly, I created this back in April. I created this coalition of a lot of ticketed event companies that we had become friendly with over the years in different markets around the country. We were just in a unique position that we're more of a nationally touring event company. So we had become friendly even with Freddie and other event organizers around the country. And instead of having one-off conversations, I just thought it would be helpful if we had, a collaborative conversation that one, people could meet each other, and 2, hopefully we could learn from some experts, but also just collaborate and share what we're each learning. So that's called Clio, and that's been a really wonderful source. And it's been like a very trusting network, I think, of people who are being really honest and vulnerable, just like we are today. So that's been really wonderful, just to lean on other event organizers, because we're all in it together, and everyone's keeping their finger on the pulse of what's happening.
Totally.
On the policy, I was gonna say, on the policy and procedure side, we actually, we found it helpful to create more of like an attendee journey manual. So thinking about how our attendees were going to experience this event from the second they saw the event listed online all the way through filling out the post-event survey. It's, I think, either 12 or 15 pages at this point. And we just thought about, like, how are we going to keep people socially distanced? Yes, we can give them tea times, but then how do we make sure that they remain in that group? And so we've done things like we're doing color-coded wristbands, not by socially distanced, which I've seen, like the red, yellow, and green socially distanced wristbands, but these are more so that we can keep track of our groups based on the time that they've signed up for. So for instance, they signed up for a noon like tea time, there's no golf involved, but if they signed up for a noon tea time, they would get a red wristband. And then like the 12:10 group would get an orange wristband, and the 12:20 group would get a yellow wristband, so that we could see and track people on the course and say, like, what's that blue group doing all the way up in front of the, in front of the yellow group. And then we have armed our actual brand ambassadors and brands that are going to be on site with a time system. So you can do it with a timer. We're doing it with like more of a traffic light system, so that we're giving each brand 4 minutes with each of the groups, so that that gives them enough time to walk from hole to hole, or brand to brand rather. So so it's a red, yellow, green timer that they can keep track of. So that's just more of like fun policy, things that we were thinking of creatively that we could put in place to make sure that we're following some of these guidelines. The actual guidelines is we're doing infrared temperature checks at the door. We're mandating masks being worn unless they're sampling at that moment. And it's obviously already outdoors. Otherwise, I would say like make the majority of your event outdoors if possible. We are
definitely
fewer people. And then we are providing everybody with a drawstring bag upon arrival that has the wristband in it, has a bottle of water. It's all pre-set so that we can limit contact as much as possible. So we're working with all contactless payment on site with any of our vendors. If you have merchandise or anything like that, contactless. And then we're also having people sign waivers just when they buy their ticket. And also working with a texting program so that when people arrive on site, we're asking them to remain in their vehicle or if they didn't take a car, if they rode their bike, or if they got dropped off by a car sharing service, that they remain in a section that will text them and say, has your complete group arrived? If so, please make your way, kind of like a restaurant reservation system, so make your way to the check-in area. If not, please wait until your full group is here. So that's our process, just to avoid, to mitigate, I guess, congregating by the check-in area or by the tee boxes. So keep everyone at a distance. But yeah, those are some of the things that we're doing.
That's amazing. It
thought of
sounds like
everything.
you guys have, thought through a lot there. I love the idea of Cleo, just that you're creating community among the event creator, folks in that space, right, for knowledge spillover and just ideating on things, and that you're looking to them in a consultative sort of manner outside of just local authorities, which is also important to pair. And sounds like you kind of have gotten down to the nuts and bolts and are really being meticulous about that entire journey for your attendee. And it sounds like also for your staff with that manifesto. So yeah, amazing. Freddie, I know that you work in a similar fashion, but I wonder how are things different from you? Are you consulting with some of the same groups? Like, how are you guys thinking about the nuts and bolts of your types of events?
Sure. So we're similarly, we're doing consulting the mayor's office and the government's office, and looking to see what the government guidelines are. We're also working with the venues. We've taken a step back from our large production events, and we're kind of sticking with simple events on our end. So we're not really doing much with vendors or serving food on our end like we normally do at some of our events. We're sticking with simple events. So primarily, we're handling everything through check-in, and then once the guests are checked in, they're in the hands of the venue. We are making sure the venues we work with, making sure that they are complying with all the guidelines. We are communicating with all attendees ahead of time, making sure they sign waivers, that they understand they have to wear masks, they have to social distance, etc. But because we're a little bit scared, I guess, we're not doing the large production events. We're sticking with the small ones where there's really not too much involved. Our game watches, basically, we're helping them reserve tables at a restaurant where they can watch the Cubs. Our cruises, they're basically buying tickets from us to go on a boat. And once they're on the boat, they're seated, social distanced, and they can drink and have fun. But we're not doing too many entertainment components or tastings or things of that nature for the time being. We just don't want to take any chances on our end doing something incorrectly.
Sure. I mean, I think even just this simple act of gathering at this point in a safe way is a treasured experience for all of us going through, what's happening right now. And it sounds like you're partnering pretty closely with your venue partners, which is great, just to kind of keep those lines of communication open. It sounds like obviously the messaging to attendees has changed a bit, but has anything else changed about your communication strategies, Freddie? Are they more consistent, or are there follow-up emails? Has anything changed there?
Definitely communicating more ahead of time. They're sending boarding emails, entry emails, and we're reiterating they have to wear masks and what they're expected to do. We're trying to be very careful to walk a thin line and not overpromise. And the fear is that if we tell people masks are required, and then all of a sudden someone takes the mask off, and the venue doesn't act quick enough, and that customer who really wants to be secured is concerned. So we're doing everything we can to make sure we're complying with exactly what we need to do. And we're doing our best. It's definitely been a challenge, but we found the more we communicate, the better. Our customers are very understanding, and it's been a great experience so far. So we've been lucky that our customers are complying and happy and understand that we can't deliver the full experience we're used to deliver, but they're happy, like you said, what we can provide right now. So.
Absolutely. What about you, Kate? Anything changes? Have you adapted your communication strategies to kind of fit around COVID-19?
Yeah, of course. We learned early on. Honestly, I'll tell like a quick anecdote, but when I did have to let my team go, I let them go on April 1st, which was a cruel, not funny joke. They all thought it was a joke, and it wasn't. And it was terrible. So rough day. But I was lucky enough to receive the PPP loan and hire them back. But while I was kind of managing everything without them, I wasn't communicating enough with our attendees and our ticket holders that had tickets that were postponed. And so, because I'm not our marketing team, and our marketing team is so wonderful at what they do that I couldn't even try to fill their shoes. And so I actually had a call with a woman who had written into customer service 2 or 3 times. And I looked back at her history, and she was a loyal customer, a loyal attendee. And so I asked her if we could just get on the call, because I said I didn't know what to do. I almost thought like if I didn't communicate, you would just forget about us for a little bit and not request a refund. And that was a really great lesson to learn very early on in all of this, that she said, no, we just want to know everything that you're thinking. We want, even if you don't know when the new date is, even if you don't know where it'll be, we just want to know what you're thinking and give us some level of certainty or just transparency. So from then on, we've really been doing our best at over communicating on social and email. Honestly, even on the phone, because that's the level that I think they deserve as being current ticket holders, and the level of service that we want to provide. I think also our communication with our partners has changed, and we want to provide them with as many details and really keep it as clear for them as possible, our vendors and our sponsors on site. So really try and cut that gray area out and make it pretty black and white of what's allowed and what's not allowed. I think it honestly makes it easier for them to make a decision moving forward or decide what the look and feel of the space will be. And one thing that we did that really I think helped them was we had a trial event for this golf course structure at our local course that I mentioned earlier. And we had our families and friends just came and walked through it, but it was structured in time, and we had a photographer, a friend on site, who was taking pictures, which we were then able to use for marketing purposes. In all, it probably cost about $250 for us to do. We rented 4 golf carts, which were $10 each, and we rented, bought some pizzas and bought some seltzers, and it was a really great way of creating a structure that we could share with people, so we could give them photos and videos and show our attendees and our partners what this was going to actually be like. And we learned a lot about the timing and the group sizes, and people are going to show up late, even though they were supposed to be there at 6, they're there at 6:15, and what are we going to do in that kind of scenario? So it helped us kind of, figure out what was going to work and what wasn't, and how we were going to handle things on site. So.
Sure. It sounds like you guys got a good chance to kick the tires on your proof of concept. So it sounds like that ultimately really netted positive for everyone involved. Awesome.
Yeah, definitely.
I think it's interesting too, because like when it comes to communication, you're really running a fine line, because the feelings right now are so divided, right? Everybody's thinking of this in so many different ways. So like the way you're approaching how you talk to people, you have to really walk that fine line, and you're not going to make everybody happy all the time, but you really have to think about what's going to make you successful and really get you guys back on your feet. And I think that's really why everybody, again, is here to listen too, is to understand, where that fine line is. And some people are going to get frustrated or maybe not be so happy with all the structure that has to be put in place. But again, at the end of the day, like, there's just still such a large community of people that are looking to gather again. So I think it's really great to hear that you're putting these huge measures in place from both sides, from whether it's like big style festivals or really small, more simplified gatherings. And keeping your vendors and
that note,
attendees and
sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. One thing you said reminded me of something we did. We surveyed our attendees, our ticket holders earlier on. And one thing that we realized was that we thought that maybe we could even restructure bacon and beer and bring it back in a similar format. And one thing we heard overwhelmingly on our survey from our attendees was like, they didn't be able to host it in the way that we had hosted it in the past, that they didn't want us to host it again. So, or like they want us to host it, in the future, but they didn't want us to change the format. So I think
they'd rather wait.
Yeah, they'd rather wait. They didn't want to wear masks inside at a regular basis. They didn't want to it was overwhelming. So
yeah, and then you've launched in an entirely different market, and you're seeing really great traction with ticket sales. So it's very interesting city to state. Each area you're in, it's very the thought process is different. Freddie, I know that you had shared with us a story that was kind of interesting about some people having not necessarily following protocol and actions you've had to take. I don't know if you want to share that story.
Yeah. We've actually had a couple interesting instances. First and foremost, July 4th, we booked a cruise on one of the boats we work with for the following weekend, July 11th. The following day, that same boat got in trouble and was all over the news for not having anyone wear masks and violating capacity, et cetera, et cetera. So that made an interesting call with me and my attorney. He wanted us to cancel the event, saying it's not worth the risk or the bad PR.
Yeah.
But what we did, we just talked to the new boat and said, hey, we want to continue to move forward with the event as planned, but let's put some guidelines in place. And we kind of gave them our list of what we're looking for, which was essentially what the city was wanting. And it turned out the boat was actually, I think, in compliance before. They just got some bad press, but still was a scary thing. And we didn't, we want to make sure that we weren't associated with it with a boat that was having problems. But like I said, I think they were ultimately fine. Just it was some bad press that was kind of misled.
Yeah.
But that same weekend, on a different boat, we had a few guests that refused to put their masks on, even though they signed waivers in advance and they knew they had to wear masks. It came to, well, how come you're not talking to that group? And the boat staff was doing their best to get to every group, but they walked to one group and they take their mask off, and then they got to another group and then they take their mask off. And basically everyone's pointing to other groups saying, why aren't they wearing their masks? So eventually a group of people had to be asked to leave the boat. The boat had to pull back early, let them off the boat, and the cruise continued. So again, for the most part, everyone's complying. We've done probably about 1,000 people so far this summer,
Awesome.
of which 95% have complied. Maybe 99% is one small group. So it's something that we're dealing with, and it's going to be a constant issue, but I think we'll get through it. And again, most customers are pretty understanding and pretty respectful of the rules. So it's a good thing to see.
Thank you for sharing that. I think it's always good to hear the good, bad, and the ugly, because that's what we're in right now. We're really learning. It's a learning experience, and everyone's making a strong effort to try to get back out there. So just, again, calling out that importance of like understanding your attendees, like you said, Kate, knowing what they're really interested in and what they're willing to do, having that great communication with your vendors, like knowing what your venue is looking at and experiencing during this time, like you mentioned, Freddie, too. So appreciate you sharing that. I think another aspect of what's kind of evolved during this COVID era time is what we've seen is this big uptick in virtual style events. That's really been the way that we've seen a lot of our organizers and our event creators shift and make that adjustment in order to continue to offer their experiences to their attendees. So kind of with events coming back in person, there's an appeal to continue to bring that virtual experience in. We had a lot of questions from the people who are joining today about what a hybrid format looks like, bringing a virtual experience integrated into an in-person experience. So Freddie, I wanted to ask you a quick question. Have you considered changing your events to a virtual? Are you considering including that into a hybrid style? Does that work for your format?
Sure. So we talked about this for hours and hours and hours on my team. Our current events, we don't think they translate to virtual at all. Bar crawls, booze cruises, festivals, we don't think those work. We are currently in the process of coming up with a couple virtual event ideas we're hoping to launch soon that are far different than what we're used to doing, but obviously attracting the same audience. So kind of that's our goal. And we just don't think the events that we do, the type of events we do, would translate well to virtual. So essentially just trying to reinvent the wheel with the same audience. So
what about you, Kate? Has a virtual experience kind of come across your mind, or how you might integrate that into a hybrid experience?
Yeah, I think, again, we've thought about it. I'm sure everyone on this call has thought about it. And I think we have seen opportunity to do that moving forward, but from more of a partnership level. So as we come back, could we offer like a pre-party sponsored by X, Y, and Z, or a tasting or demo from a really great chef that we want to highlight and feature. And one opportunity, I guess, that we see there being is that since events are in one space, one city, would this give us an opportunity to attract people to experience the event who couldn't be there in person, or don't want to be there in person, don't feel comfortable being there in person. So I think that there's a way to maybe create that hybrid. It might be challenging in a food and beverage, or more challenging in food and beverage. Like, I think conferences have a really great opportunity to pursue a hybrid model, or even just virtual model. I just saw Comic-Con, which in San Diego I think it's been a 50-year run. It's this first year that they're going virtual. And it's free. And like, I can't wait to go. I never got to, we always have festivals the weekend of Comic-Con in New York, and I can't wait to attend. So I think it could even, I remember also when Coachella, I think they were one of the first music festivals to stream some of their main stages, and people thought, oh, this is going to actually make tickets drop off for next year. And what it did was increase tickets, I think like 4x. And so I think by giving people this opportunity to see what they're missing, or see what they could be tasting or drinking. And if there's a way to encourage them to like drop ship or pick it up from a local store, wonderful. But if not, like, I think that there are ways that they could be engaged from home. And even if it's watching our bacon eating contest, or sipping along and understanding the differences between hard seltzers and flavors. I think that there are ways that there could be that hybrid. It's probably not going to be the same energy as if they're on site, but at least they'll still be able to join and engage.
Yeah, that's the tough question I think everybody's asking themselves, is where do you make those compromises, and how do you really encourage that virtual experience to give the same impact and oomph that you're getting in person? Kate, has there been a virtual event that you've attended recently that just was interesting to you, or something that you really enjoyed?
Yeah, so many. No, there was a really great event that The Infatuation put on, which is a local restaurant finder. It's a cool app. They bought Zagat a couple of years ago, and so I highly recommend it.
I follow them every city. I
can't go out to eat dinner anymore without their recommendations. And so they, during this time, they have access to really great chefs. And that's another thing I will say about virtual, and just during this time, talent is available. Like, they're just around. They're not on tour. They're not in their kitchens. Like, they're around and they're available, and they want to be a part of things. And so that all being said, they had access to one of this restaurant called Emmy Squared. She's amazing. She's a chef and owns multiple restaurants in New York. And so I watched this cooking demo, and it was, she was making a pizza, one of her famous pizzas, in her kitchen at home. Her cat jumped on her island. She didn't have mozzarella, and so she had a cheese stick that she used in her fridge. Like, it was just really, it made it so approachable, and it was just a fun thing to follow along with. And it made you feel like, okay, I can do this. If she can do this with a cheese string, I can do this. So I think that was a really fun, and she forgot to put the sauce on. That was really funny because then we were like, should I chat in that? Like, does the sauce go on later? So it was just really, it was fun to experience those.
That gives me way more confidence in my kitchen abilities.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Freddie, what about you? Has there been any cool or fun or interesting, different virtual experiences or events that you've attended so far?
I've been attending a bunch of virtual yoga and story time and music classes for my children. And those have been really fun. My kids love them. It's fun to watch them. But those have been great. And then one thing I've noticed was that I think it's a really good sponsor opportunity here. Mariano's, which is a very big grocery store here in Chicago, they've been hiring and sponsoring children performer every Saturday morning to do a children's performance for about an hour. They plug themselves. There's sometimes hundreds of people watching it. So hundreds of sets of parents watching their kids be entertained by Miss Jamie at the farm. It's really cool. And then I've also attended events with Lincoln Park Zoo. They've done some live events on the weekends as well. They're all age appropriate. And I think that the opportunity for virtual, I think, is stronger for nonprofits. People seem to want to give back, but also get some in return. Whereas, for us, I don't think we're going to pay for a virtual bar crawl. But if it was a virtual bar crawl put on by a charity, that might work. People are a lot more inclined to fork over money for something that's maybe not the same experience, but if it's going to a good cause. So I think the opportunity for virtual events is much stronger with nonprofits.
Yeah, and even just brand awareness, right? Like there's an opportunity for you to get in front of more people if it's a low cost to get in, or maybe even no cost just to get that opportunity. That's great. I'm sure all the parents are really loving that additional hour of helping hands while working from home.
Yeah, one thing you mentioned for branding, I've seen a bunch of bars here in Chicago and clubs that will have DJs live stream. And I'm shocked people actually attending that. But a lot of times thousands of people will watch a live stream of a DJ playing from inside a club that's empty. So people just kind of want to hang out and have music in the background and miss that clubby music. So I've seen a couple of those do well. They're not making money off it, but they're keeping their name out there. So
exactly. That's valuable.
I was going to say, it's a wonderful opportunity to keep your attendees and your audience engaged, even if you're not necessarily making the same money you would on an in-person event. It's keeping your brand and your events and you top of mind for everyone who just wants to connect at the end of the day.
Definitely.
Cool. So switching gears a little bit, we want to talk a little bit about the future events and especially the future of your guys' events. So Freddie, I'll start with you. From your point of view, what does the future of events and the industry look like in the next year? Like just in your opinion.
Sure. So for us, I think we're going to continue on our path of really simplified events, just really simple, easy things that don't take too long to plan. We learned our lesson, planning these events out and we can get burned pretty bad in the long run, especially with how the government keeps changing things. And I'm glad they are. I'm not opposed to that, but it makes it difficult to run this business, at least for us over here. So we're going to stick with the simple events that we can plan a couple of weeks in advance. I think that's going to be the trend you'll see over the next year or two until a vaccine or a cure comes out. We make our money on large scale events, 5,000, 10,000 person bar crawls and large festivals. And we're not confident that we can produce that in a way that's going to be safe and also that's going to be guaranteed to go forward. So rather than investing in that, we're just kind of, again, we're looking to reinvent the wheel to a certain extent and also keep with our simple events.
Sure. Yeah. Keep your format a little turnkey. And like you said, something that you can plan a couple weeks ahead, just so that with all the sort of pieces in movement, you're still keeping control over and setting the correct expectations. Kate, what about you? How are you thinking about the industry in the next year and your guys' events?
Yeah, I mean, it's challenging for sure. It's really like every day it changes. I feel like there are just highs and lows, and their excitement, things that come through that you didn't think were going to come through, and then things that fell through that you didn't foresee falling through. So it's definitely a challenge. I'm not sitting here smiling saying like, it's amazing, it's perfect. There are no hurdles. And so I think, I'm hopeful that our events this year will get to happen. I'll believe it when I see it. You know, I think it's like, I think in general, it made me a little bit more just cautious, like we just, you know, or just, you know, aware that they could be postponed. And so we're hopeful that we're doing it in a way where they won't, but who knows? And so I think that is one element. I think, you know, in general, you know, as down and as hard as this time is for all of us, I look back at the recession in 2008 and what came out of that, which I know wasn't directly affecting event businesses, but I think what came out of that was the need to socialize. And like that was when a lot of event companies launched or had been in business, but you know, that's when music festivals really came back in a big way, and beer festivals started, and just you know, bigger, better events I think were starting to be produced around then. So I'm really looking at even like Gen Z and thinking about, I mean, that's not for the next year at least, but like just thinking about how they're going to feel about gathering and socializing, and that need that they're going to have, and how do you fulfill that down the road in 4 or 5 years even. Kids who are in college, like what does that look like right now for them, and how can you create something for them? So I think even though we're in this period of time that sucks, you know, I think we all are very creative people. That's why we're event organizers. We're very, we execute our ideas. And so I think there's no better industry to be, you know, the most hurt from this than us, because we're resilient, we're quick on our feet, yep, we're very creative, and we make it happen. So I think like we all need to get together or think individually, however you think best, but be innovative, take risks, and let's see what we can do during this time to make the best of it.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I have to 100% agree with your statement about the events world and this industry and the people who make up sort of the operations of it. There's always a contingency plan B, C, and D. So I don't think events are going away. I don't think experiences are going away. We're just thinking on our toes, right? We're getting real creative. So kind of to that end, in this process, I feel like there's been a lot of ups and downs, as you mentioned. Have there been any learnings or any sort of like gotchas that you'll take into the future as you partner with vendors, partner with venues, or just like think about events in general? Anything that like you're like, well, I won't do that again, or I'll make sure to think about that?
Well, I was thinking about, yeah, the bubble ball pit that we had planned, probably that was a little that probably won't be coming back for quite a while. No. We had a ball pit for our, you know, who doesn't love a ball pit? But not
adult ball pit, right?
Adult ball pit, yeah. For bubbles for Seltzerland, but that won't be happening for a while. But I mean, I think in general, yeah, learnings, there are a lot. You know, I think being as nimble as possible, to, you know, Freddie's point, and being able to still execute a great experience, you know, so we have our Seltzerland keepsake cups, and we want to be able to provide those. They're metal, they're iridescent, they're adorable. They
were
really
iridescent.
are so great. I have a stack of them sitting downstairs, but they're really wonderful. And, you know, we want to still provide those to people, even though they can't use them directly on site. They could pour their sample out of the sampling cup, the one-use cup, and then sip it out of that. But you know, I think we still want to try and provide as much of an experience for people as we possibly can, but understanding that it's obviously going to shift, and we won't be able to have our bubble ball pit there, or our bacon seesaw, or, you know, any of our cash coupon, you know, machine with our bacon coupons flying around. So I think that's one learning. And I think another is probably, yeah, I think, well, contracts is a big one, like putting some kind of like making sure your contracts are very clear about cancellation with venues and with partners. That's another learning. And then on a later note, like really just maintaining great relationships, because I think at this point, like you know, even though we're socially distancing, or I like to think of it as like physically distancing, because I've been socially engaging with more people than I would usually be. So whether that's like blasts from the past, or people I would never have had the, you know, guts to reach out to, who I admire. I've been able to connect with so many different people. And so I think fostering those relationships and leaning on them has been a really big game changer during this time.
I love that. That's awesome.
Okay. What about you, Freddie? Anything that you'll take from this time and bring into the future as you start thinking about your events?
Sure, absolutely. One lesson I learned is don't put the year on a shirt. Had thousands and thousands of T-shirts that we have donated to charity that we can't use again. Um, being nimble again, just really making sure that we're not planning too far in advance of things that we can't get out of in this scenario. Really communicating with customers now, over communicating our refund policy and how that works. Even now that they know the risk of COVID, when people that will cancel the day before event, they might buy a ticket, in June, and a week later, want to cancel and blame it on COVID. Just really making sure that we're really clear what our refund policy is. And then just one thing, I guess, a little lesson learned, I might be jumping the gun here, is the things that I used to really sweat a lot are really no big deal. 6 months ago, the problems we had, I would kill for those problems again right now today.
Right.
But obviously, we're different problems. So those small things that we used to freak out about as event planners and event organizers that would really kind of, really get us upset and, stress us out, those are small now. This is I can't think of anything worse happening to our industry than this. And if we can get through this, we'll get through anything.
Yeah.
That's perspective, right? You never know. Hindsight's 2020. To your point earlier about the merchandise, like what's the direction then? Is it like third annual instead of like 2020 now, or just kind of thinking creatively there?
No, I don't know. Probably just keep that off there and not even put the year on there, or not put anything on there. Just keep it simple.
Sure.
We do different designs for our shirts every year, so different. Just if we don't use that shirt this year, we use next year.
Sure.
Even then, event a challenge of where do you store 10,000 T-shirts?
Right.
So it's the amount of stuff that we've given away or thrown away in the past couple of months is crazy. But we order in advance to save money. Maybe now in the future we might not be doing that. Might be paying a little more of a rush fee for that stuff.
Sure.
Right.
Deciding where to place your risk, for sure. That makes sense.
Yeah, well, I think these are all really great learnings. I think the biggest takeaways are we're all nailing home is communicate like very clearly. And I think that the structure that your attendees want is that they want to know everything in advance. Like there's a lot of fear here. There's a lot of caution here. There's a lot of need for gathering too, but like having that really written out in some way, whether that's through your very specific refund policy and have that completely communicated through emails or a waiver. I think you both mentioned that you both have waivers in your purchase flow, which I think is super, super important right now. Kate, you've even mentioned like an entire playbook, like a handbook of like what attendees are going to expect to see on site, how you're spacing them out and timing them out, just to keep people feeling really comfortable on site. And I think that that's going to be things that even after we get a vaccine or whatever the threshold is that people start to feel more comfortable again, we're going to start to see that this is just like a way in which we move forward in a lot of ways. So, and Freddie, to your point, like the booze cruise is like making sure that you've got like space between the tables. That's very similar to like how we're seeing restaurants operate. So I think it's great. I think it's awesome. It's something that I'm like, yes, go, because it's something I preach to my clients across the board. So I appreciate you guys sharing your experiences and your stories. Anything we covered?
Sorry. When you mentioned restaurants, that's another really great resource. I feel like there haven't been that many resources directly created other than what you guys have created with the safety playbook. Like there haven't been that many resources created for how events should re-enter. And so we've been leaning a lot on how restaurants have been told to re-enter. So even we've been keeping our eye on, like, I think that there are now like health concierges or something. I think I read something like that. That's what they're called. I was looking at like hiring, who restaurants are now hiring, and what the positions and titles and how they've changed. And so one is the health concierge, and I just loved that. I was like, okay, instead of it's like this check-in person, it gives me as a consumer reassurance to know that there's somebody that's just monitoring health, and whether that's the cleaning of the bathrooms and porta potties, or which is a process, to make sure that we have porters who are assigned to do that, and making sure that there's somebody just on site to oversee the cleaning process, I think would give me reassurance as a consumer or as a partner. So, or even as a consumer at a restaurant, as an eater at a restaurant. So I would lean on like what restaurants are doing a lot, because that was built into our guidebook and our handbook. And I think there's just been more developed around how restaurants reopen more than how events have come back into person.
Yeah, on that note, I was going to say that
Advocates. Yeah.
I was going to say that I think it's very important to communicate with your attendees ahead of time before they purchase their tickets that you are taking safety seriously.
Yep.
I've seen a lot of restaurants and bars and other venues, and ourselves included, we put on there that we're taking your safety seriously, and we let them know what we're going to be doing, so they will even purchase tickets. If you don't put it on there, they not even know you're doing that. And then Mel, you mentioned the waivers. A little shout out to Eventbrite here, but Eventbrite is awesome as letting you customize waivers. So you can add waivers to your order form. So if you don't know that, it's an easy thing to do in the order form. And it's awesome, and it's something we've been using a lot, especially more so now lately than ever.
Yeah, you guys have a great waiver. We've chatted quite a bit about it, and it's awesome.
Yeah, I have to agree with both of you that as a consumer, I feel like any business that I'm interacting with during this time, it really does reassure me when they've gone the extra mile to say, like, here's what we're thinking about, here's what you can expect. Like, it's all about over communication. That's the underpinning of the new normal, no matter what experience, a live event, a restaurant, a nail salon when they open up, a hair salon, anything. It's like really taking the time to empathize and think about everybody as people who are experiencing the same sort of, honestly, global trauma, and coming together to say, like, we can still make this work, and here's how.
Yeah, definitely. And staying on your toes. I think that was huge. I think that you, Kate and Freddie, both have a lot of event experience in your back pocket. So being able to put an event on in a couple weeks is not easy for most people. So I think that that's huge. I think there's a lot of experience that goes into that, but I think these tidbits today are really helpful for everyone who's listening to kind of go into the world and start to think a little bit more about how they'll be reopening and going back into the in-person experiences. Again, just as a, overarching theme here, we really do want to make sure that everybody knows to make sure you're looking at your city and state laws, make sure you're thinking about what the rules and regulations are, because every style of event, amount of people is very different. So just make sure you're following those protocols as needed, depending on your events in particular. But I hope everybody today had a great experience getting to hear from Freddie and Kate. I know I did. It was awesome. They both bring so much great knowledge. So I just want to say thank you again for sharing your stories, the good, the bad, the ugly. This is a tough time for everyone, and we're all learning together. We're all going through this together, and you guys are bringing in a lot of great experience and knowledge to the table. And hopefully this has been an opportunity for other people to kind of feel assured that what they're doing is the right things, or maybe kind of take a step back and say, I really need to rethink about how I'm doing this. So just a quick reminder, this is recorded, so we will be sending an email out to everybody after we wrap up to just kind of send over the recording of this, and we'll also be sending over our safety playbook. So if you haven't had a chance to review that, we highly, highly recommend taking a look at Eventbrite's safety playbook. We've spent a lot of time putting that together, and hopefully that gives you some good information, as well as this whole webinar is a new experience for us at Eventbrite. We're really excited, myself and Shirene included, to bring our clients on and have them share their experience. So we're really hoping that anyone who listened today takes the time. You'll receive a survey, so feel free to give us your honest feedback. Let us know what you want to hear about. We're going to keep doing these, so if there's anything that you'd like to learn more about, we're open to hearing that. So again, thank you all. We're all in this together. We're getting through this COVID time, and it's hard, it's tough, but I appreciate everybody's time today, and until next time, thank you all.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks, Freddie. Thanks, Kate.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye, everybody.